Let's do a little exercise on hearing, and in particular, on what goes on in you when you hear three different sounds. First, what is your reaction to this sound? For some, that would be a frightening or unhappy sound. Oh no, our child is sick again. For some, that would be the sound of incredible joy and relief. Our baby survived birth. Baby is okay. For others, that is simply the sound of even more sleep deprivation. Or what? What did you hear? Let's try another. What is your reaction when you hear this? For some, that would be the sound of good memories. Oh, I love that time we got to go to the ocean. For others, it might bring back a frightening memory of that time you almost drowned, right? And for others, maybe it's just something you've always longed to be able to do, to go to the ocean, but you might never be able to do that. Or what? What did you hear? Our third sound. Maybe that's hooray, we won, or maybe darn, those are the fans from the other team, we lost, right? Or, as I've experienced, oh, I wish I hadn't hurt my knee and could have been in that game. What did you hear? It's true that we can all hear the same sound, but hear it with different meaning. It's also true that you or I can hear the same sound in a different moment and hear it differently then. Now, in today's first reading, God was speaking to Samuel. But that is not what Samuel heard. 3 times Samuel hears a call, but he thinks it's Eli. Now, Eli takes some time to reflect on that a bit, to listen, and realizes that this was God calling Samuel. So too with us. We hear countless sounds and voices and noises during the courses of our days. But because we, like Samuel, are usually not expecting it, nor are we, seeking it necessarily, it is easy to miss God in those moments. What does God's voice sound like for you? You have heard that. I am absolutely convinced that God is omnilingual, that God knows how to speak in a way that you and I and each person can hear, whatever our unique personalities and histories. But I think we often miss it because we tend to think God must sound like this. Something dramatic, right? I don't think so. What does God sound like for you? And, how do we know it's God, right? Well, we never have certainty because faith is not all about certainty at all, really. But we can learn to recognize God's voice. And we do so by listening for it. How does a mom or a dad learn to recognize their child's voice in the midst of a group of other kids' voices? A mom has listened so carefully for that voice for so long that Not only can she distinguish her child's cry, but has also learned to differentiate between the cries, right? Which one is because my child is in big trouble, um, just needs a nap, or is frightened? We need to develop the habit of listening for God's voice if we are going to recognize it, which means we've also got to take time for this sound. Yes, that was silence. We need time to reflect, to think, to be quiet on the inside a bit. You know, recognizing the voice of God takes intentional listening because there are so many other sounds that are not the voice of God. You might have an alcoholic parent who screams at you, saying unfair, awful things. Or maybe you still hear those words in your memory even though that parent is long gone. That is not the voice of God. And I know it's really tough to be able to hear the voice of God then, but I believe God is using others and the quiet of your own heart to give you a different message. I believe in you. I'm sorry you didn't deserve that. I will never withdraw my love from you. Or maybe there are those who are trying to get you to hate somebody, or to hate this group, or to vilify that group. There is, as you know, way, way too much of that going on these days. Hatred and division are never the voice of God. Never. God is speaking, but that's not the voice of God. What do you think the voice of God sounds like these days? You know, someone once asked me to describe what God's voice sounds like for me. My response then was, as now. I just really can't. Whenever I try to put words on that, the words just sound so dumb to me. But I will say a bit about 3 of the ways I sometimes hear the voice of God, knowing that it's not quite like this for you, but perhaps they might help you be more aware of how God is there for you. For me, sometimes then, when I am trying to decide or to pray or working on a homily or whatever, talking seriously with somebody, I sense that God kind of shapes my words or leads my thinking just a bit. There are other times when I would put it this way, those moments when I sense that my silence touches the silence of God. Sometimes I sense the presence of God when I wake up in a moment to the moment, when I become aware of being aware. Please allow me this concrete personal example. I've told a few of you this already, but years ago, at the most intense and painful time of my entire life, a woman whose name I don't remember must have seen the anguish in my eyes when I handed her the cup at communion, because when she gave it back to me, she put her hands around mine for just a moment and looked up at me with such kindness. And I believe now, as I look back, that I did sense the right thing there. That through her, God was saying, I'm here. I'm not going to abandon you in this. Years later, I was helping distribute communion at a different parish when I saw a woman in my line whom I had not seen for a long time. Now, she was in trouble, fairly recently divorced and leaving her children in the care of their daddy, her husband. And I had found out that she was living out of her car. And this, then, for the first time, I see her in my line, and I think I should do something. Like maybe squeeze her hand when she comes up to let her know that she's not alone. I don't know if I got self-conscious or what, but I didn't do it. I waited too long. And I think God was speaking to me, and I didn't respond. I missed my chance. God speaks in the ups and downs of our regular lives, and usually without words. Perhaps we're with a family member, maybe a friend, or maybe a nudging in our hearts. Maybe there's a challenge that just wakes us up a bit. Perhaps we catch a glimmer of the presence of God in the stranger who smiled in a warm breeze on a cool evening. Maybe we see the goodness of God in someone who reaches out, or even in the compassion in our own hearts. The good news is that we can learn to more and more recognize the voice of the God who speaks in the silence and the sounds that surround us. For there will certainly be more sounds.
If you feel like a room without a roof, clap along.
And silence. In all of that, God speaks. And if you or I think that God must sound like this, we'll usually miss God. So, how would you describe what God sounds like? What does God sound like to you?